We're taught that hard work is noble and easy work is shameful. And then that's reinforced by the way that we're rewarded in the workplace. So no wonder so many of us work ourselves to the point of oblivion.
Now, you hit your goal of becoming head of comms by the time you were 30, and from the outside, everything looked perfect. So why did you decide to walk away?
I feel like that's such a big question, but I guess the answer is because I'd worked myself into mental health crisis. As you say, I had this goal. I wanted to be head of comms by the time I was 30, and I got it. But in the getting, my mental health became very bad, and I got to the point of breakdown where my brain literally wouldn't function and my body wouldn't function. So I kind of felt like that moment, I didn't feel like it was a choice to walk away. I felt like I didn't have a choice. But then after taking time off from work, being signed off work and going back, I then chose to walk away. I asked them to make me redundant because I just knew that I couldn't continue to be sane and have some level of health while working in the employed world. And it's not that I was working for a toxic company at all. They wanted to help me. But the way that the world of work teaches us to behave and the way that my brain worked were just like a recipe for explosion.
That seems really intense. I can't even imagine how heavy that must have felt in the moment.
Yeah, I think in the moment, so the moment was sitting on the Bakerloo line to work and just feeling not just physically sick, but so panicked, both physically and mentally, and just this knowing that I couldn't function. I was professionally useless. I couldn't open an email. I couldn't hold a conversation. I couldn't make decisions. And I ran a team of 12 people with a £2 million budget. Like that just, I could not do that job in the state that I was in. It wasn't that I couldn't do the job. It was that I just couldn't be there. I could not, my nervous system couldn't withstand being in the work environment because I was so unwell.
Wow, that definitely sounds like a lot. But before you got to that point, I'm curious, you'd set this goal so clearly, and head of comms by 30, that was the milestone. So what did you think that title would actually give you?
I think, and it's interesting, I've been reflecting on this recently, I think that I thought it would give me importance. And importance to myself. Not necessarily that people in the world would think I was important or care about what I did. It certainly would give me importance in the organisation. And I felt that that would give me confidence. But I think it's that it gave me a sense of my own importance, which sounds really pejorative. But I think it was giving myself status, making myself feel that I had done something good and that I was good at what I did, which I do know that I was, even though it all ended in disaster. I know that I was really good at my job, but I think I wanted that confirmation in a title.
Yeah, but it makes sense. I mean, society often teaches us to validate ourselves through titles and recognition, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it is so hard to validate yourself, so hard to, especially as someone, I'm someone who still has anxiety and depression. I consider it as like a chronic illness that flares and goes into kind of remission, for want of a better word. But as someone who struggles with anxiety and feelings of low self-worth at times, I think it is so hard to validate ourselves. It's so hard to build and hold that internal pride and confidence, especially when the system of work, the world of work, teaches us that titles, salary, roles are the things that give us value or the things that denote our importance or our status. And I think knowing that those external validators are really important in the world of work, I think makes it even harder to create and hold intrinsic validation for ourselves. So, yes, I wanted a title. I wanted the big phone. I wanted the big role.
And you got everything that you wanted, but before the breakdowns, you ticked basically all the boxes. But did it ever feel like you were living someone else's life?
It felt like I was like clinging on with my fingernails. It felt like, I remember describing it to someone as skiing downhill as someone who did not know how to ski and trying to like hang on to the branches as I was going down to stabilize myself. It felt like I was literally like clinging onto the side of a mountain with my fingernails, trying to hold myself in that position. I think the thing that it felt so hard to maintain for myself was other people's opinions of me. I felt like I was constantly in a fight with other people in the organisation to prove that I was worthy of the title, good enough, capable enough. And I think some of that had some basis in real interactions and experience, but a lot of it I think was in my own brain.
That sounds exhausting. Keeping up appearances while your body was screaming at you, basically. Do you think there were early warning signs you might have ignored?
Yeah, in my experience, I always get early warning signs, and my mental health has never been that bad again, and it's like the job of my life to never allow it to get that bad again. But I have obviously had peaks and troughs, and I think something that I have experienced every time I feel my mental health dipping is I know what the early warning signs are and I just don't want to see them. It's the same, I get migraines, and whenever I feel a migraine coming on, I know that I should take one of my prescription migraine pills, but there's something in me that's like, oh no, just give it a few more hours, and it always gets worse, and I always need to take a migraine pill and go to bed. And it's the same with my mental health. So I think the early warning signs were literally years earlier, I was crying in the toilets of jobs because I was so overwhelmed with the volume of work and the pressure. And that was in, previous roles. So I think the early warning signs have been there for years in terms of my approach to work. But I think the easiest early warning signs to see are the physical ones. So things for me were interrupted sleep. I would wake up in the night. I remember one time waking up in the night, literally sitting bolt upright and saying, "Where's the bed sheet?" out loud. And my boyfriend being like, "What the heck are you talking about?" And a bid sheet is like a briefing document that you prepare for someone going on telly. So obviously I was ruminating about work in my sleep and having interrupted sleep, waking up in the night. I would... Another like physical symptom of deteriorating mental health that I experienced was really bad digestion problems, and stomach pain. And I had that for years. But it peaked at that period where every time I brushed my teeth, I was gagging. Like I couldn't brush my teeth without feeling like I was going to vomit, basically. So like the symptoms got worse and worse. And other like classic kind of anxiety and depression symptoms are aches and pains around your body because you're so physically tense all the time. Like often people get pain up the back of their neck or across their shoulders. I used to feel like my shoulder across my shoulders was literally like a plank of wood. And then in terms of behaviour, it was things like I was checking my emails until like midnight and waking up at 6 and starting to check them again. I'd be worrying excessively on the train in the morning, looking at my emails about what the person on the other end of the email thought or what was going to happen when I got into the office. Or I constantly felt like I was under threat and like I was going to get found out for being crap. So yeah, lots of early warning signs that definitely I did not act on until I had to.
Yeah, definitely. And it's crazy how those warning signs can slowly creep in without us even realizing. Or is it that we do notice them, but it's just easier not to pay attention?
I think it's a combination of a lot of those things are normalized. So the behaviours, especially being on your emails at all hours, answering the phone at all hours, working 12, 14 hours a day, especially in the industry I was in, which was communications and crisis management and reputation management. A lot of those behaviours that are wildly unhealthy and over time contribute to and directly result in hugely elevated cortisol levels, which, not to get too much into the geekery of it, but we all experience spikes in cortisol. It's natural, it's what our body does, it's the hormone that the body releases when we're under stress. But those spikes should go up and come down. And they shouldn't be going up and coming down every 5 minutes. They should go up and come down. You know, the purpose of our body doing that is if we feel like we're in danger. You know, if you're a woman walking down the street in the dark and you feel someone over your shoulder, that's where your cortisol spikes, because it's readying you to run away or whatever. But what work in that way does is it spikes your cortisol literally constantly. And so your cortisol levels are so high that your body is flooded. And so you constantly feel like you're in danger in fight or flight. And that's what has the impact on you physically. It's what perpetuates those behaviours. So because if you're scared that you're going to get found out or shouted at, then you're always ready to fight or flee. So I think partly it's a lot of those behaviours are normalised by the world of work. And partly it was just I didn't know. Like, I didn't know that this combination of symptoms, like poor sleep, bad digestion, aches and pains, headaches, coupled with all the kind of experiences I was having at work, I just didn't know that those were signs of deteriorating mental health. And I didn't know until I literally slammed into the wall and started to get help.
Yeah, wow. But I do totally agree with you that so much of that pressure comes from the world around us and the stories we grow up hearing about what success should look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And also kind of, especially in the employed world, the behaviours that are rewarded. So whenever I did really well in my 10-year career, I got promoted regularly, I got pay rises regularly, and always people would say, oh, you can really rely on her. We can really rely on you. You're always on the end of the phone. You've got such a can-do attitude. Like, all those behaviours that were driven by fear and were working me way too hard were rewarded by the world of work. It's not just that we're sold this idea of success, it's that those behaviours are actively rewarded.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a massive thing in our society, the way success is framed and how burnout is sometimes treated like a badge of honor. And that really affects how we see ourselves and how we approach work.
I find it really interesting to think about the words and phrases that we're told throughout our lives, not just at work. And obviously a lot of these are kind of English idioms and homilies, so may not translate into other languages. But we're told things like, the early bird catches the worm.
Right.
Nothing that comes easy is worth having. They pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. Like, we're taught in so many small ways that hard work is noble and easy work is shameful. You know, people who work 12, 14 hours a day, who've taken on VC funding, who grow their business exponentially are deified and glorified. And people who work from a cabin in the woods 4 hours a day are seen as weirdos. And we're taught that hard work is not just a rite of passage. It's not just the only route to a valuable life. We're taught that it's noble, it's right, it's the right thing to do. And then that's reinforced by the way that we're rewarded in the workplace. And so no wonder so many of us work ourselves to the point of oblivion. No wonder so many people tap out of their careers at 10, 15 years in and go and do something completely different. That's not just because they're interested in something else, it's because they've worked themselves to the point where they can't do it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And it's mad how many of these stories are just quietly running in the background, shaping how we see ourselves, and we don't even realize that they're there. And that's kind of scary.
Yeah, it's really scary. I do feel like it's got a bit of the Matrix about it. Like you're kind of like running, and then you kind of sit up and you're like, whoa, that was wild. I'm really glad I'm not in that anymore.
Totally. Now, I want to go back to that moment when you decided to engineer your redundancy. You mentioned sitting on the tube on the Bakerloo line. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so I now know I'd already had one breakdown probably a couple of months previously, and I'd taken a week or two off work and sort of dragged myself back to work. And at that point, I'd started to see a therapist. But I'd sort of, I just didn't think that it would take me so long to get better. And I also don't think I realised quite how ill I was. So I'd got myself back to work but then probably a few months later, I was at this point where once again, that morning, I couldn't brush my teeth because I put the toothbrush in my mouth and thought I was going to hurl. And I remember feeling when I was in my flat, like, I just don't think I can do it. I don't think I can go in. And I got myself onto the tube, and I was, as the closer I got to my destination, the worse I was feeling, and the more powerful this feeling of I just don't think I can do it was. And I sent a message to a friend who knew, what had been going on, and the friend said, well, you've got two choices. Either you turn around and go home and call the doctor and get signed off again, or you go into work and tell them that you can't be there and then go home. And I got off the tube, went into the office. I went up like the side staircase, left my bag near my desk, and went straight down to HR and literally said to them, I'm really sorry, but I can't be here. And we had a brief conversation about why and what was going on. And then I got my bag and went home. And then I didn't go back to the office for 4.5 months.
Wow. How did you feel in that moment? And after that, when you got home?
I felt so... In the moment, I felt incredibly full of fear and panic and emotion and worry. And then I genuinely don't remember what I felt on the way home, but I do remember that I literally spent weeks in bed because I think when your body is so flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, you literally can't function. Like my brain, I couldn't make decisions. I couldn't bring myself to respond to a text message. I couldn't read. I couldn't concentrate on listening to anything. And I remember it took me weeks to be able to really do anything. And we're talking go for a walk. So I think I just must have felt totally broken. I remember saying, I just think my brain is broken. It's like a switch has been flicked to my brain. It just doesn't work anymore. So I think my brain was just powered down on that way home from work.
That's intense. So were you feeling so overwhelmed that you didn't even second guess or have any regrets? Or were you still thinking, I should have stayed? Can you remember that?
No, I definitely didn't think that. I think I was just literally broken. I didn't have space in my brain for regrets or second guessing or any more worry. Also, the person I spoke to when I said this, when I went in and said I can't be here anymore, was really understanding and really kind. And, my employer at the time did their very best by me. But, so many companies do not have any clue how to support someone who's having mental health issues, because so few people in positions of power have experienced that themselves. So I do remember feeling a sense of relief. And then, the concept of fight or flight, we forget that there's actually a third option there, which is freeze. And it's what happens when, like, your cat picks up a mouse and brings it into the house and you think, oh my God, it's killed a mouse. The cat opens its jaws and the mouse runs away. What the mouse has been doing is playing dead, because that's its very last way of trying to survive. And it's called freeze. It's what happens when a creature is in so much danger that they think their only way to survive is to pretend to be dead. And I think, and that's what our nervous system does as well. It has this fight, flight, and freeze response. And I think at that point, my nervous system was so overwhelmed and fritzed out that all it could do was freeze, and it just shut down. And it's kind of a trauma response as well, is for your brain to forget times, moments, situations, because they're too much. And I think that's probably what happened to me there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so sorry to hear that, though. It sounds like a very tough experience for you.
Yeah, it was awful for a really long time. But not in any way to toxic positivity my way out of it. I'm not grateful for that happening at all, but I am glad that I made the decision to say I can't be here. I'm glad that I made the decision to ask to take redundancy. I'm glad that I made the decision to set up my own business, because even though it's, as you know, Sophia, running your own business is not a bed of roses. It's certainly a more comfortable bed than one that's made by somebody else.
Yeah. So I'm curious, looking back, how did that decision change you as a person? I'm sure so many things have changed in your life since then.
Yeah, I feel like it's so interesting. I feel like so much has changed, but I also feel like I've just kind of expanded who I am and the parts of me that were already there, but that were constricted in that when I worked with somebody else. I've always been, I don't like rules. I don't like authority. I don't like being told what to do. I'm obscenely independent. I'm outspoken. I've never minded speaking truth to power. And I did that all through my career, sometimes to my detriment. And I think since that experience, as in the breakdowns, I think what it's done is allowed those parts of me to be as big as they want to be. So before that, I actively had not wanted to work for myself. It's quite a kind of common career path in communications to get to a certain place in-house in an employed role and then go freelance and kind of contract out. And that was something that I never wanted to do. But I think as well, like the experience of coming back into the workplace and knowing what I needed, but it not being easily accessible to me, as in like people just didn't know how to support me. And so I needed to ask for the help that would be helpful, where rather than having it offered, which is an extra burden when you're the person who's already like mental. I think it kind of awakened this entrepreneurial spirit in me, which was, I can see that that's a huge gap in the market, and I can see that companies want to do right by their people, but they don't know how. And I knew that I could help them figure out how. And that's how my business began. somehow it like awakened this spark of entrepreneurialism in me. And I think it not only made me think, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to take a risk and go for it. Because also, you know, let's not beat around the bush. I took redundancy. I'd been in a well-paying job in a good company for a number of years. So I got a very nice redundancy payout that I knew would support me for a little while. So it gave me a financial buffer, but it definitely kind of gave me this sense of, fuck it can't be worse than it has been. If it all goes tits up, I'll just get another job. So it definitely gave me like a little spark of extra risk taking. And I think as well, because not just because of those experiences of my brain just stopping working for months on end, but also I lost a parent when I was 16, and I think those two experiences together just smacked me in the face with life is so short. Life is brutally short, and I've already spent 10 years working myself into a position I don't want to be in, and I'm never going to do that again. I kind of can't overstate how important that knowledge is to me now, that like I know that one day I'm going to die, and that might not be that far off. And so why would I waste my life being ill and miserable when I have the option to do something different? And so I think it kind of awakened some things in me that were already there and gave me that little, you know what, fuck it, spark to give it a go.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear about your parents, but I mean, I actually can relate. I also lost my mom when I was fairly young in my 20s. And for me, it's also made me realize how short life is and how important it is to spend our time intentionally. So there is a silver lining, I suppose.
Yeah. God, I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
The worst club to be in is,
I know,
the dead dad or dead mum club.
Yeah.
It's horrific. I think when you have lost someone so close to you, especially when you're young or they're young, for me, it was this kind of existential awakening of like, what the fuck are we doing here? Make
exactly.
the most of what you've got. Like, your life is all that you get. Why are we wasting it working all the time? And I kind of, because of what I do now, like coaching other women in business, my goal is to make sure that other people don't have to have the same experiences that I've had or that you've had, to recognize that life is short. And when you work for yourself, you get to have far more control over what you do with your life and how you spend it than if you work for an organization. So make some good choices.
Yeah, totally. So you talked about the spark you got, the idea for starting your own business. And I'm wondering, when did that start? And when did you first get that idea? Was it still while you were working full time, or did it come around the time of those breakdowns?
Yeah, no, it was definitely after I came back to work. So I'd had the day on the tube, gone in for half an hour, left again. And then I was signed off for about 4 months. And then I started a phased return back to work. So I can't remember. Maybe I was doing 2 or 3 days a week to begin with. It was hard, as it must be for anyone coming back into the workplace after a extended period of time. You know, I'm sure people out there who've had children and taken parental leave and come back into the workplace would feel this too. But I felt it was even harder for me because I felt a lot of shame attached to it. Like, everyone knew that I'd gone loco and had to leave. And I didn't know what people knew or what had been said, or everyone was so kind to me, but I felt this sense of shame. And also, I was still trying to like crank my brain back into working again, and working in a way that didn't make me crazy. And I was going back into the job that had made me crazy. So I was trying to like do the work on my mental health. I was trying to, sort of crank my brain back into working. I was also trying to change the way that I worked so that it didn't become so incredibly overwhelming and damaging again. And also the people around me wanted to support me, but they didn't know how. So they were saying to me, what do you need? Tell us. And that was like yet another thing for me to have to figure out.
Wow.
And so it was in that period that I was like, you know what? This is a huge gap in the market. And also the company was going through a lot of change. There was a new CEO. First of all, I thought, I can see a gap in the organisation for this particular role. As part of all this change, I'm going to pitch to say, this is the role that you need and I could do it. And in my head, I thought, right, I think I could do that full time for a year. And then after a year, it could maybe go down to part time. And then I could start to build up this business on the side. And the organisation, the people I spoke to were basically like, yes, we know that this role is needed, but we can't do that right now. And so then my next pitch was, okay, well, you can make me redundant and here's how you can do it. As in, like, here's where I think my function could go in this new world that you're shaping. And so, yeah, I took redundancy, and then again, lunatic that I am, the next day started setting up my business.
And how did that feel?
Amazing. Felt great. Yeah. Because like I say, I was very, I don't want to say fortunate, because, you know, I worked myself into a breakdown for that company, but I got a comfortable redundancy payout. I also got other benefits. So like, you know, in some organizations, as part of redundancy, they'll pay for you to have coaching with someone to help you figure out your next step, or they'll pay for some training to help you get ready for your next step. And so I asked them to pay for a course which was literally about how to set up a business, which was great. And bought myself a cute desk, bought myself a pink laptop, set myself up, felt great. Yeah, it was crazy. I just felt, I mean, it was a massive, massive adjustment. And I'm 7 years into business now, and I feel like, you know, every day, every week is basically like self-therapizing yourself when you run your own business, because you're trying to figure out so many things about yourself and
I know
how
that
you
feeling.
do it.
100%.
Yeah, every day is another challenge. But it's a challenge I'm in control of. It's a challenge
Exactly.
I can choose how to respond to. And so, yes, I felt free. I didn't feel terrified. I don't think I even felt that scared. I think because, you know, I had the financial buffer there. There have absolutely been points in my business where I felt terrified, but not at that moment. But yeah, it was a challenge to, again, not only figure out how to set up and run a business, but how to set up and run a business in a way that wasn't going to cause me to become really mentally unwell again. But that's since kind of become my trademark, is, you know, I run my business in a way that works for me unapologetically, because I've worked in ways that don't work for me, and I'm never doing that again.
So I'm really curious, how would you describe what success means to you now, and how has that changed over time since you were head of comms in your 20s when you still had that goal?
I find this question so hard, because like I don't actually really resonate with like long-term goals anymore. Like, I had this goal in my career. I'd had like 5-year plans, 3-year plans before that in terms of my career and my life. But I really don't feel connected to long-term goals anymore. I also don't really feel like I have an idea of what success looks like to me, and what, you know, when I will have achieved it. You know, the way I work now, I have client calls 2 days a week. On another day, I run my group program. Around that, I go to events and I speak on podcasts and I speak on panels, and I would love to write a book one day, maybe about my experiences with work. I want to go on as many holidays as I can this year. That's my big goal for this year. I love my life. I love my business. I love the house that I live in. I love my garden. I love that I get to work wherever I want. I love that I get to go on as many holidays as I want that I can afford. I just want more of that, please. I'd like to bring more money into my business. I'd like to go on more holidays this year, which I'm absolutely I'm on the train. I'm making it happen. But, I don't really have any kind of, oh, I'll be successful when. I just don't really have an answer to that anymore. Just because I want to live a nice life, have a lovely time. That's about it, really.
Yeah, but maybe the fact that you don't think about that so much anymore, it tells a lot about how your idea about success has changed over the years.
Yeah, and it's, I'm a very decisive person. I make decisions quickly, easily. I feel a strong sense of rightness. But there are big things that I am still kind of grappling with and that I find it difficult to make a decision on. So, for example, owning a home, owning a property. My partner and I choose not to have kids. We choose not to get married. We love to travel. We're both home workers, so we can live and work anywhere. And I'm kind of torn between, like, do I want to own a home because that's what the world tells me I should want? Or do I not want to own a home so that I can be free to live and move and travel all around the world? And I oscillate around that decision, and I have done for years because, I don't know what it is that I truly, truly want.
It is really interesting how many shoulds the world throws at us, like what we should do or want to do. And it can be so hard to tell the difference between our own thoughts and what everyone else expects.
Yeah, massively. But I don't struggle with that at all in most places. Like, I know that I'm a woman and therefore the world believes that I should procreate. Me no want kids, so I'm absolutely fine and dandy with saying no to that. I know that, I'm in a relationship, and we've been in a relationship for a very long time, and the world thinks that we should get married, but neither of us are really bothered about that. So I'm fine with not, being part of that institution. But yeah, I think it's something to do with the owning a home or the flex. It's like a push-pull between security and flexibility. And I think I'm, still figuring out what the right way for me looks like. But yeah.
Yeah. But it is crazy how much pressure there is, especially on women, to have kids, settle down, get married. And I've been with my partner, who just happens to be a man, for a long time. And at some point, I realized that I was constantly getting questions like, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? And when I asked him about it, he said that no one had ever asked him those questions. And it's just so maddening. It's just like definitely not equal.
Yeah, it's wild. I have no words for the patriarchy, really, other than fuck you. But yeah, we think, or the world wants us to think that feminism has worked and we're all equal and rah, 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 but we're not. There are still more CEOs called Steve than there are female CEOs.
And creative directors as well in agencies.
Exactly. Also, no offence, boys, and I'm sure there are some great ones, but I see way more creativity in women than I do in men. Just saying. And as you say, like, how often are women in their late 20s, 30s asked, when are you going to have kids? Or when are you going to have another? Or why do you not want them? Won't you regret it? What if you regret it? Who will look after you when you're old? These are all questions that I've had asked of me. I don't think my boyfriend has ever had one of those questions asked of him, as your partner hasn't. And yeah, the world is unequal in so many ways, not just for women, for people of colour, for people with disabilities, with, so many intersections of the ways that the world is not equal. But we're absolutely kidding ourselves if we think that men and women are seen as equal by the world, because we're not. And women know that because they're the ones on the end of the inequality.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so much more pressure on women. And when I say girls and women, I obviously mean anyone who identifies themselves as women or has been shaped by those expectations. But there's all this pressure, but we're still expected to work like we don't have a family and be at home like we don't have work. And it's such a crazy dichotomy.
Yeah. And you know, work is harder for women. Women have to work harder to get promotions, to be taken seriously, to be considered for opportunities. And I think that's something that I really knew in my career. And whether it was conscious or subconscious at the time, it absolutely drove me to work harder, because I could see around me that women had to work harder. That my female director, in a conversation with the CEO, was visibly not taken as seriously as a male manager in a different department. I could see it, and all the women in the room could see it. In my first job, I was told that I should wear shoulder pads, clothes with shoulder pads. I should sit on the edge of my chair and I should hold my arms out or place my arms flat on the table like this so that I appeared bigger physically, because I'm a small person. I'm 5 foot. So, you know, you're told, look more like a man, behave more like a man, work harder than a man. Oh, and then go and procreate and further the human race, but come back to work when you've done it quickly, please, and never mention your children.
Exactly.
It's like, are you fucking joking me? Oh, my Lord.
Now, I want to talk about work-life balance for a bit, because it seems like you've achieved that, which is so rare. Now, I know the past few years have been hard for many creatives. So for people who are juggling making ends meet, how do you think they can find that balance?
Yeah, I hear you. And yeah, I work with and have worked with a lot of creatives. And I know, you know, like we said, it's not a bed of roses running your own business. And a large part of that is because you have to promote yourself, and that can feel really hard. And it feels even harder if you're not feeling good about yourself or you're feeling deflated. I guess my advice for creatives would be, don't charge by the hour. Don't do day rates. Don't do hourly rates, because what you're doing is not only slapping a ceiling on what you can earn, but you're tying your time to your income. And to start looking at package-based rates or project-based rates that don't just look at your time that you put in, because also the time that you put in is not the only thing that you put in, especially as a creative. Your heart and soul and experience and approach and all of those things need to be considered. And what that will do is mean that you can earn more money in less time, essentially. So I would look at the ways that you're pricing. I would also say your brain wants to tell you that if things are hard for you in your business, that you should be actively working constantly to try and make them better. And that isn't always helpful. It often isn't helpful, because it depletes your energy. It makes you feel more tired. It makes you sometimes feel like you're getting nowhere fast. So in those moments where, if you're going through a quiet period in your business or in your work and you're feeling like, okay, well, I should be doing stuff, so I'm just going to do all this stuff, and you're feeling tired and depleted and that's not actually getting you anywhere, ask yourself the question, what is the one thing I can do that will move me closer to my goal quickest, whether that's signing a new client or getting in front of new people, or, I mean, in those quiet times, the goal should always be signing a new client, because anything other than that is kind of obfuscation. Don't be setting yourself a goal of growing 5,000 more Instagram followers. If you need business, your goal needs to be signing clients. And that's how you kind of cut through all the busy work and all the rubbish. What is the one thing I can do today that will get me closer to my goal of signing a new client? It's probably direct emailing some people that you would be interested in working with. It's probably asking people that you've worked with in the past if they have any people who need your support. It's probably posting on LinkedIn to say, I have availability for X from Y date. It's probably not planning a month-long campaign on Instagram. It's probably not sorting your content calendar out. And that one question always helps me to kind of focus and not just fill my time with busy work, to do what I need to do and then give myself time to live around that, because that's what will fuel your creativity. That's what life is. And that's what you need, is the joy of living, not just the drudgery of working when it feels really hard.
That's such a good point, because it's just so easy to fill our calendars with busy work just to feel important and productive. But really, you're not working on the things that actually matter.
Yeah. Like if all your business comes from LinkedIn, forget Instagram, post on LinkedIn. If that's the period of your business that you're in, that you are, that it's feeling hard and that it's feeling like you need to bring in more business, focus on the actions that are actually going to get you closer to that quickest, not the other things that you think you should do. Because otherwise, we're just filling our time meaninglessly.
But for a lot of creatives, and for me personally, it's so tricky to find balance, because I just love the craft and I can easily lose track of time, especially on projects where I really want to push myself. And, I didn't become a designer for the money, and being passionate doesn't protect you from burnout. And sometimes it makes it even worse. So for someone like me who just loves the work but wants to avoid burnout, how do you stay balanced while still enjoying the creative process?
So for someone who loves their work, I want you to remember that you can love your work, but I want you to love your life more.
But the thing is, for a lot of creatives, life and work are really intertwined.
They are, but you also know when you're working. You know when you're sat in front of your computer working on designs, or when you're sat in a coffee shop doodling or illustrating or looking at image references. You know that that's working, and you know that that's not life. So yes, I hear you, and I am totally with you that work is a part of your life, but it is not your whole life. And so I would want people to remember that you get one life, go and live it. But equally, some practical ways of doing that are things like having clear boundaries with your clients. So, for example, I would encourage every single person on the planet not to allow their clients to WhatsApp them. Have it in a separate place, because having your clients in WhatsApp is literally blending work and life. You're going onto WhatsApp to arrange coffee with a friend. Oh, and there's a client asking you where those files are. Have it somewhere separate so that you can more easily delineate between life and work. So boundaries around the way your clients contact you, the sort of number of revisions or contact time they get from you, so that you're not constantly jumping on calls or going back and forth on Instagram DMs or WhatsApp or Slack or Trello or one of the many million places that we communicate with people. Have some very clear boundaries around the work that you do and how you engage with clients, or how you work with clients on that work, because it makes it easier for you to put work away and start living. And I want us all to love our work, and I want us all to want to be great at it and to want to improve. But I don't want to work more than I want to live.
Before we wrap up, what's one thing you'd love listeners to take away from our conversation?
I think it is what we were just talking about, that work is a part of your life. Don't you dare let it take over your life, because it will if you let it. So make decisions intentionally, take action intentionally. And if you feel like you're sliding down that ski slope, trying to grab onto branches on your way down, stop and do something about it. Because especially when you work for yourself or you're freelance, you have far more control over how much of your life your work takes up than when you're employed. So yeah, I think it's just the reminder that please don't let work take over your life, because your life is all you get.
Oh, I love that. And where can people learn more about you and your work online?
So I mainly hang out on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Get Wildly Free, or you can just Google Jo Hooper and I'm pop up in various places.
Amazing. I'll definitely pop those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for being my guest today, Jo.